Golf Smarter number 349, published on September 19, 2012.
Welcome to Golf Smarter Mulligans, your second chance to gain insight and advice from the best instructors featured on the Golf Smarter podcast. Great golf instruction never gets old. Our interview library features hundreds of hours of game improvement conversations like this that are no longer available in any podcast app.
The faster the green, the less slope you can have before that point is reached. The slower the green, or you got to tilt it, then you reach the point with a greater tilt. But it's always the combination of the green speed and the slope steepness. And so if you say everybody mows their greens today to about stimp 9, that limit is reached around a 6% slope. And all golf course architects know this one too. If they make 7% slope, the golf course is going to stimp 10. You're not going to have holes there. He's just luxuriating and spending somebody else's money by designing that sort of green, because the person that owns the golf course is not really going to be able to use 7% slope unless they get really slow grass. And their members don't like slow grass, so they're always stimping 9s or whatever. If you inform yourself about golf course architecture, you will know that the range of steepness of slope kind of maxes out around 6%.
Learning to read the practice greens gives you a huge advantage with Geoff Mangum.
This is Golf Smarter, sharing tips and insights from golfers and golf professionals to help lower your score. It's worked for your host, Fred Green.
Welcome back to the Golf Smarter podcast, Geoff.
Hey, Fred.
How are you, buddy?
I'm doing good. I'm in western North Carolina outside of Cullowhee.
Where in Western Carolina? What's the name of the city?
It's Cullowhee.
Cullowhee?
It's near the Cherokee Indian Reservation on the west side of Asheville, on the way to Tennessee.
And did you stop and teach there today, or where did you teach?
Well, I taught in Winston-Salem at Southern Glen Country Club, and now I'm headed to Atlanta to teach some friends down outside Atlanta in a place called Canton. There's a golf course down there called Bridge Mill that's run by Tom Lussinger and George Kellenhofer, my good buddies down there. George Kellenhofer is a long-term legend in golf teaching. He taught a lot of the people.
Oh, can we get him on the show?
Yeah, he'd love to. He's an inventor. He invents stuff about 2 or 3 times a week.
Wow. All right, so you are obviously not in a hotel with a direct connection here because it's kind of breaking up. Where are you sitting right now?
Oh, I'm right outside of McDonald's. I have a Caesar salad and a coffee. And it's beautiful weather. It's balmy, sunsetty, nice clouds.
Oh, but it's.
But I couldn't get my Motel 6 to set up for you today because I'm still traveling. After we do this little talk, I got to keep rolling.
Okay, so your signal just got a little better, and we'll keep our fingers crossed. And if this signal gets bad, we'll stop recording and pick it right up, and no one will ever know the difference. But let's. I reached out to you. Because you are so much fun to have on the show because
I poke sticks in your eye.
Because you poke sticks in my eye. Man, the level of detail that you go into is just a golf junkie's dream.
All right.
I've never heard a short answer, and that's why I want to have you back on because the level of detail is unrivaled. Unrivaled on what you do on putting.
We'll call it Baroque.
Why?
Lots of ornamentation.
Okay. All right, we'll call it Baroque. That's not the name of the show. We're going for Baroque today.
We're not going Baroque.
Man,
we're going Baroque.
Yeah,
Baroque.
I'm sorry, that was really bad. And if nobody has ever heard you on Golf Smarter before, why? I mean, Geoff's been on a lot. He was also a regular contributor to Golf Smarter Tips, and they're still all there. A year's worth of amazing content, and it's putting, and more putting. I don't know if there's anybody in the world, Geoff, who has the encyclopedic Baroque knowledge of putting that you have on putting or on Native Americans.
That's because I'm mentally disturbed.
And that's why we get along so well.
obsessive compulsive to the nth degree square, cube, and exponentially multiplied against itself several more times.
Yep. That's why we're such good friends. So the latest piece that I got from you, fascinating, and I think it just hits right into the heart of it, on reading the putt on the practice green. Right? So
got a simple little deal.
Do I need to have you order another cup of coffee and just let you go, or do you want me to ask you a specific question about where we should get started when we're on the practice putting green and how to my first question is, when we're on the practice putting green before we start a round, how much should we say to ourselves, okay, this is how these greens on this golf course work?
Pretty much. Today's greens agronomy and maintenance practices, there's not that big of a difference between the practice green and the golf course. They're mowed the same. They're built the same. They're subject to the same chemical treatments, the same irrigations. They're in the same weather, climate, sunshine, and everything. It's all the same. Same grass, highly engineered grass.
So hopefully that's going to give you a good sense of touch and pace when you're practicing that you can confidently take it out onto your round with you.
Well, pretty much. Don't worry about it. People are overly concerned about the difference between the practice green. They hear little stuff in golf culture and it worries them for 30, 40 years. They need to use their own eyeballs and look at things. There's no big difference between practice greens and the greens on the golf course. Hadn't been for 20 years.
And so it's going to break, it's going to roll, it's going to speeds. We're just fine. And so that means that once we leave the practice green and get ready for our round, we should have confidence on our touch and our pace when we go out and play, as you know, from what we just experienced on the practice green.
Yeah, that's what you're doing. You're brushing up on your touch. You're brushing up on your mechanics a little bit for a straight stroke, and then maybe you mess around with getting a little confidence or something,
Obviously, you've moved out of the front porch of McDonald's.
Yeah.
And something's moving in there. Something's playing with your wires or your headphones, but something's scraping around.
I'll try not to touch it.
Okay, don't touch it.
Okay.
Just get your hands off of that.
Okay. I actually have my car on powered up. Do you want me to turn my car off?
No, why? Is your car making noise? You got to probably have the air conditioning on if you're sitting in North Carolina in your car with the windows up.
Well, I've got some peace and quiet in my little Rudyard Kipling house on my back sort of a deal here.
All right, so let's talk about being on that practice green and what we can learn from it.
Sure. Let's talk about reading putts.
Yes.
I created a thing recently about how you do 2 putts on a practice green that will allow you to get a real good sense of what breaks you will be facing for the rest of the day.
Okay.
Let me say that one more time. 2 little putts.
5 feet, 10 feet, or does it matter?
I like 10 feet. The math works out better from 10 feet.
Okay.
Which I'll explain to you in just a second. But 10 dividing by 10 is easy. Just move the decimal.
Okay.
To the left.
Now there's something beeping that's driving me. I'm so distracted by these little extra noises. I apologize. I'm just a recording guy.
Okay, I stopped it.
What were you doing?
That was my little in-car power unit where I take the plug into the battery, the cigarette lighter, and then convert it into a
beeping noise. All right, so
I don't know why it beeps, but it's part of the whoever designed it made it beep.
10-foot putts, move the decimal point. Go.
Okay, here you go.
Teach me.
All right, here's the deal. Most of the putts that you can actually sink are within 15 feet, and for most people, they're within 10. Everything else is basically a lag putt. It's going to be a 2-putt. Do you have the skill for lag? Yes. Okay, now we're moved beyond that. We want to make a lot of 1-putts out of 15-footers.
Yes.
And in. Now, really, for amateur golfers, you're really talking about 10 feet and in. They're not that good from 15 feet. All right, now, The second thing you want to know is that greens have a certain topography where, for reasonable areas of size and diameter around the hole, the same flatness or planar shape of the surface persists. Usually for at least 3 good steps away from the hole in any direction, maybe as many as 5 or 10 paces. And the pace that we're talking about is a standard military parade pace of 30 inches, which is 2.5 feet. And every 4 of those parade steps is 10 feet. So if you walk 4 feet away from a hole in any direction, you're talking about a 10-foot putt. For most putts, 85% of them, if you're within 10 feet, there's no funny contour other than a flat surface from ball to hole lots and lots of times. And that's very beneficial because that means that the break is, quote, simple, unquote. You don't know how much it is, and that's what we're focusing on now. But a flat surface of a tilted slope of the green from ball all the way to the hole without any funny wrinkling of the surface by hills and valleys and all that, that presents a simple break. And for most makeable putts, in the 75-80% of what you actually face when you go play golf, that happens to be the case. And that's because of the nature of designing and maintaining and mowing greens. They can't change shape all that radically, or else you have a problem maintaining them and mowing them. You know that old Norelco commercial at wintertime where Burl Ives is riding a razor across the snowdrifts and rainbows?
Yeah, he was dressed as Santa Claus, right?
Yeah, reindeers are singing Norelco razors and all that.
I do remember that.
Well, that's the nature of a mowing deck of a Toro triplex mower, and you can't change the radiusing of the green surface too radically, or else you'll scalp the green every time you mow it, and that can't happen because you got to mow it once a day. So the rate of change of the surface of the green is conditioned and limited by the technology, and so you face a lot of situations in makeable putts where there's no funny contour between the ball and the hole. There may be subtleties like a footprint and a ball pitch mark and maybe a little something, a little stand of poanya in the way and that sort of thing. But generally speaking, if you have a good, well-maintained golf course with plain Jane, uniform, homogeneous grass coverage on the green, mowed nicely, you got a lot of chances where you can one putt a simple putt. All right, now what I teach and what I've created is 2 putts on a plain flat surface with a tilt to get you so you understand all the breaks on the tilts that you'll be facing from all the distance inside about 15 feet. The only assumption is that the green is actually unwrinkled between the ball and the hole.
Define unwrinkled.
Well, if you take a piece of paper and you lay it down on the kitchen counter and flatten it out real good, that's unwrinkled. If you lift it up in the air and stretch it tight, that's unwrinkled. If you lay it down over top of your thigh and bend it a little bit, that's wrinkled. That's contoured.
Contoured. Okay. Contoured. Okay.
The word contoured means not flat and plain the way I'm using it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking of like those mornings that the groundskeepers didn't drink enough coffee or they had a bad morning with their wife or something, and they put the flag right at the crest of a hill. I mean, no matter what angle you're coming from, you're going up and over.
Well, there are guidelines published by the U.S. Golf Association about pin placements.
Is there really?
Oh yeah. And I'm a greenskeeper. I've done this for more than 1 year. I set pins, so I'm not just a lawyer and a golf coach and a physicist and a neuroscientist. I'm also a greenskeeper.
Well, don't forget you're an Indian expert.
And I'm the top Indian expert.
Go on my website, look up my little puttingzone.com/Indians.html, and then just drool at what I've got. All right, it's there. You'll see it. All right. So anyway, the guidelines of the USGA basically don't want greenskeepers to do what you just described. They don't want sudden changes of contour. They want golfers to have the opportunity from anywhere on the green in relation to the hole to send the ball to the hole and be able to stop it there within about 2 feet.
Really?
That's one of the guidelines.
Oh, so I wonder if these guys read that.
They don't because they're just uneducated, clot-headed, rude individuals, also called cretins.
Or cretins. I am
CRETINS. Okay, whatever that word is.
Yeah, and I want every Golf Smarter listener ever to just, whenever they see the ball roll, they get it to the hole, and then it just keeps rolling by another 5 or 6 feet. That's against the rules.
That's right. Now there's a physical issue. The combination of green slope, that means steepness. How steep is the tilt of the surface? The surface is flat. Let's say that, but you tilt it. That means it's not level. Now, golf people on TV, they are frequently also cretins, how you say it. They don't know the difference between flat and level, those words in the English language that we all are supposed to speak by about age 3, 4. Flat does not mean level in gravity. It means uncontoured and planar. I hate the word planar because of the way you stretch out the second syllable. R. Planar. Okay. So, but flat does not mean level.
Oh.
Okay. Now you take a CD-ROM, it's flat.
Right.
If you bend it, it's not flat.
Right. It's contoured.
Yeah. But if you slap it down on the kitchen counter, it is both flat and level.
So flat could be on an angle.
Right. It's tilted.
But it's tilted.
That's right. Okay, so all greens you don't make greens level. The water comes down, the water won't go anywhere. That'll drown the grass. That's called root rot. It's the most common cause of problems on greens. All architects in the world know not to create root rot. So they don't build flat greens, level greens. They don't build level greens. That kills the grass.
So wait a minute. All this stuff, people going, it always breaks to the mountain. It always breaks to the water. That's not necessarily true, right? It breaks because it's about irrigation.
The golf course architect must design the subsurface of the green so that it's tilted. And if it's not tilted a certain steepness, the water will just pool under the surface and sit there and fester. And it messes up the ecology of the green system. In ancient Athens, where I have been in ancient Athens, I'm working on my 21st incarnation right now. There is a subway in Syntagma Square in downtown Athens, and you go down into the subway, and they have a little display case, a museum case, where in 500 BC, the engineers of Athens built terracotta sewage pipes. And the sewage pipes, there's a little placard, a little fold-over cardboard placard in there in the case, like you get a dinner party that sit here, kind of a fold-over thing. And it explains that unless you tilt the terracotta piping at least 2 degrees of grade, or 2% of grade, not degrees, percent of grade, the water will not build up enough velocity and momentum to clear the sludge out of the pipes, and the pipes will fill up and stop up. All right, so the modern golf course architects, if they don't know that going in when they start building these $5 million golf courses, they will never work again.
Wow.
Okay, so they learn by hard experience that they better tilt the undersurface of the green. They fill French drains in the herringbone pattern, and they collect the water 14 or 15 inches beneath the surface of the grass into a pattern, and then redirect it back into the general terrain pattern of the erosion of the local terrain, which is typically away from the mountains towards the ponds. That's true. Golf course architects will play with that because they're crafty little devils. And sometimes they will tilt it contrary-wise to the natural flow of the landscape in order to mess with the golfers and challenge them to pick up on what they've done.
Their primary function, mess with us.
That's right. And there's a limit on how much they can do before the trick reveals itself and the gig is up. So they're subtle when they do it, but they do it on purpose. All greens complexes today are basically structured by hand by the golf course architects, and so they pretty much decide what they want to do. It's just a question of whether they're skillful in concealing their art. If you I don't know if you want to go into all this stuff, but you remember a couple of years ago they played.
Well, wait a minute. You know what? I'm sorry. I don't hold that thought. Please remember, because I know I will forget. But I've also forgotten that I'm supposed to say that this episode of the Golf Smarter podcast is brought to you by. All right, Geoff, let's get back to your stuff because, not like we're running out of time, but we don't have a lot of time left. But we are going to do a part 2.
We don't want to bore people.
No, we're going to do a part 2. We're going to do a members-only episode. So let's take this to our limit here, and then we'll come back and do a members-only episode.
All right, well, let me give you the diamond bullet in the forehead shot on 2 putts.
Okay, 2 putts.
You find a flat area of the green that allows you to make a 10-foot putt without running over any funny contour. And then you find a flat tilt that is about 2%. That would be a very...
How many percent? I'm sorry, how many?
2.
2%.
2.
Okay.
Because of I was telling you that there's a physical limit on how much you can tilt a green before the ball will not stay on that surface. It will always roll downhill no matter what you do. That limit is really a combination of green speed and slope. The faster the green, the less slope you can have before that point is reached. The slower the green, the more you got to tilt it, then you reach the point with a greater tilt. But it's always the combination of the green speed and the slope steepness. And so if you say everybody mows their greens today to about stimp 9, maybe stimp 10 on occasion, that limit is reached around a 6% slope. And all golf course architects know this one too. That if they make 7% slope, the golf course is going to stimp 10. That he's just wasted pinnable positions. You're not going to have holes there. He's just luxuriating and spending somebody else's money by designing that sort of green, because the person that owns the golf course is not really going to be able to use 7% slope unless they get really slow grass. And they don't like that. Their members don't like slow grass. So they're always stimping 9s or whatever. And so the reality of today's golf course architecture of greens, which should inform every skillful golfer's mind, which I doubt that it does, but if you inform yourself about golf course architecture, you will know that the range of steepness of slope kind of maxes out around 6%. And if you stretched the numbers 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 out on a bell curve, the 0s and the 6s are practically non-existent. The 1s and the 5s are rare. 2 and 4% slopes are pretty common. And 3% is the wheelhouse core of the whole deal. 2 and 3 and 4% are the slopes that you run into most frequently. And that's what we're about. Learning the ones you run into most frequently. We're not trying to learn mathematics and physics formulas like these yahoos from Yale teaching how to calculate with Lagrangian's formulas in 4 dimensions what exactly the ball will do to a pinpoint target that is infinitesimally small. We're not doing that kind of silliness. We're playing golf like rough and rowdy Scots walking across a sheep pasture. All right, so what we want to do is we want to bushwhack the most common putts that we actually can sink and actually run into. And that means we really want to know inside of 15 feet and specifically 10 footers on 2% slope, 3% slope, 4% slope, and that sort of thing. So here are the two putts that'll tell you that. Find a 2% flat area of the green that you can make a 10-foot putt on without running across a funny contour. How do you know it's 2% slope?
That's funny. That was my next question.
Okay.
How do you understand? How do you say that's a X percent?
All right, this is how you do it. A 2% slope, the word percent means 100 per 100.
Okay.
So if you walk 100 inches straight down the fall line, straight uphill, downhill line through the hole, away down the steepest direction from the hole, down that fall line, 100 inches, and then compare the elevation of the grass where your foot is with the elevation higher back up that 100 inches where the hole is. If the drop in elevation from the hole to the foot is 2 inches, it's 2% slope.
Well, I guess that's pretty easy.
Mm-hmm. And now how do you know it's 100 inches that you walk downhill? Military paces are 30 inches. 3 of those plus 10 more inches.
Yep.
3 steps plus the 1 grip of a putter. All grips of putters on conventional putters are 10 inches long. Also, your foot is about 10 inches long. So 3 military paces straight downhill from the hole plus 10 more inches, that's 100 inches. The second way to know 100 inches is that most conventional putters are around 34, 35 inches.
3 of those.
If you flip 3 putters, you're there. Good enough for going work. Now, if you're standing below the hole, 100 inches away, how do you sort of assess how different it is in elevation? You have to imagine a string at the hole that you draw out, kind of like a razor stripe or whatever. You draw a string level away from the hole over top of that line that you walk down so that the string is level in gravity, and you pull it out, and then the string is poised in the air a certain elevation above the ground. And if it's 2 inches above the ground, that would basically sit on the top of your shoe at the toe area. That's about how high the toe area of your shoe is. If it's 3 inches, that string would come to your foot and meet somewhere about where your laces are. Not quite at the top of the laces, but about right in the middle, near the top of the laces, is about 3 inches off the ground. If the string comes to your foot and hits the ankle bone of your foot, the ankle bone is about 4 inches off the ground. So basically you walk 3 steps downhill from the hole straight down the fall line and add 10 more inches. Then you look back at the hole and you imagine that string coming out, level in gravity, and hitting your foot somewhere. And you say, is it top of the toe, 2%? Is it laces, 3%? Or is it ankle, 4%?
All right, so here's what I want to do. We need to continue this because I need to know more about the percentage and what it is. So, okay, I figured out it's 2%. What am I supposed to do with that information? I also want to know. Well, no, don't even answer me because I know that's going to be another. And we have to bring Terry on for our short game academy. But I also want you to explain what the hell a stimp meter is and where it comes from, and any gadgets out there that are fall line gadgets, like beyond plumb bobbing and that stuff. So will you come back for a members only episode for next week?
Oh, absolutely. All
right, then we'll record that in just a moment. But thank you very much. Is there anything you'd like to tell our general audience about getting this paper that you've?
Oh yeah, sure.
Please.
It's free.
Well,
send me an email and say hello and ask for the paper. You can ask for the green reading paper or PDF. I made a PDF. It's 45 pages long. It's got pictures, diagrams,
links,
everything
and
you need
links to videos too.
Yeah. And it does. I got a little YouTube video to show you how to do that string thing I just told you about. And you send me an email to Geoff at Putting Zone, and the Geoff is spelled funny, GEO. Starts out like George, ends up like Jeff. GEOFF at puttingzone.com. And you send me an email, boop, I'll send it right back to you at 3 a.m. in the morning.
And also, there are certified putting zone instructors everywhere nowadays, aren't there?
That's right. There's 148 coaches in 20 countries around the world.
So if you're as enamored with Geoff's content as I am, and you want really to work with somebody one-on-one, you can find them, and they're all listed on your puttingzone.com website, correct?
I have a Google map that shows exactly where they are. I get them on the phone.
Easy. And you're traveling around the country all the time doing clinics.
That's where I'm going right now. I'm going to Kentucky to work with the University of Kentucky coaches, and also my friend Matt Jordan there in Lexington, Kentucky. And before Sunday, I'll have 3 more coaches.
Amazing. All right, so we're going to, for all the Golf Smarter members who want to continue this, listening to this conversation, stay tuned because it'll be coming up next week. Geoff, we will speak with you on our next episode. Thank you so much, buddy, and go take a swig of that McDonald's coffee.
Okay, thank you very much.
And now, it's time for Score Zone Short Game Academy with Terry Kaler. If you have a question about your short game, click on the Score Zone Academy button at golfsmarter.com and let the experts at Score Golf put a new money club in your bag. If Terry answers your question on the show, you'll receive a free Score 4161 wedge. Better yet, click on their ad at golfsmarter.com and you'll get 10% off your order. And here's another reason to join Golf Smarter for members only. 15% off your order from Score Golf. That additional 5% could easily pay for your membership for the next few years. Terry, welcome back to our Short Game Academy. The reaction from our audience to your advice and generous offers has been pretty awesome. There have been some great questions that have been coming in, and I get the sense that more than the opportunity to get a free wedge, our listeners just love your insights to the short game.
That's what we're here for. We're here to help people score better and learn more about their scoring clubs. And the only thing I have to tell you is if they're looking for a free wedge, they can't get one from Score Golf because we don't make wedges. We make precision scoring clubs.
Ooh, got me. Okay.
Gotcha.
Got me. Yeah. And so we would love to give away some scoring clubs. Because that's what you're going to do. You're going to score better when you play with your Score Golf scoring club. And if I can be a testimony on that one, I'm loving mine. But because of my insanity of moving, I haven't gotten a chance to play, so I'm watching other people play a lot. But I want to get to these questions, and we're going to concentrate today on one question that came in from Randy Starbuck, who lives in Elk Grove, California. And, you know, it's just coincidence that they're Californians we're doing this. But his question says that the conventional wisdom is that bounce needed in a wedge, he'll call it a wedge, is governed by 1, course conditions, hard, tight, or versus lush and soft, and or 2, your swing, a sweeper versus a digger. Well, that creates some wide variation. So when buying a wedge, what should we lean towards for selecting the right bounce, course conditions, and our swing type? I hope that makes sense. Does it? I'm sure it makes sense to you.
Well, that very question is what led me to develop the patented V-sole about 20 years ago. But instead of getting into a commercial, let's talk about Randy's dilemma, because everybody has that same dilemma. And what I'm going to start with is make sure everybody really understands what bounce is, because I get hundreds and hundreds of questions through my blog and people calling in, and people are confused. I had one of the top 100 retailers in the country approach me at the golf show, and this is a top 100 teacher and a top 100 retailer, and she says, "Can you really explain to me what bounce is?" So that's how confusing bounce is. So let me try to clarify for all your listeners out there. If you hold up your wedge or any golf club and look at the bottom of the golf club, look right down what I call the worm's eye view. you will see that a wedge has a downward angle from the leading edge where the sole meets the face backwards to the rear trailing edge of the sole. This downward angle is called bounce. And very simply, what bounce does, because of that downward angle, is it causes the turf to reject that golf club, if you will. So on contact, the amount of bounce, it acts like an airplane wing. It provides lift, and so the turf will tend to reject that. So the functionality of bounce is governed by the width of the sole and this actual angle of the downward. So when we talk about high bounce wedges, we're typically talking about wedges from 9 to 15 degrees of bounce. And the modern wedges typically all have about the same width of sole. If you look at the wedge rack from all the different brands, you don't see a lot of variation in sole width unless you get into there. But obviously, if you have a lower bounce angle and a wider sole, you're going to have more bounce effect than a narrower sole. The challenge for wedge play comes into, if you go back and look at the history of the wedge, the earliest wedges had a wide sole but not a lot of bounce on them. But bunkers were all very firm back then. As the wedge evolved through the 40s and 50s, we saw wedges get bigger soles. Some of you might remember the old Hogan Sure Out. There was a bunch of other wedges out there that had bigger soles and rounded soles, and bounce began in the 60s, really in the 70s and 80s. You began to see these variations of low bounce, high bounce. But the industry has been very consistent. All the wedge companies will tell you that, just as Randy asked, that you need a high bounce wedge for soft and lush lies. You need a low bounce wedge for hard and tight lies. Well, the challenge there for all of us is my golf course has got all of those. My golf course plays tight and fast, except it rained last night. Now it's lush and soft. The tour player has an easy solution to that. He goes into the equipment trailer and gets a bunch of free new wedges so he can deal with whatever he got dealt with. But in our world, it really doesn't work that way. Conventional wisdom also is, if you have a steep angle of attack and you're kind of coming down on the ball more abruptly, you need a higher bounce wedge to give you more rejecting force. If you have a shallow angle of attack, you kind of nip the ball off without much divot, you can get away with the lower bounce wedge. The problem is, if you're a good player, you vary your angle of approach because the kind of shot you're trying to hit. So if you're trying to hit a little lower shot, you're going to swing shallower through impact. If you're trying to hit a higher shot, a flop shot, you're going to pick the ball up more, the club up more abruptly and have a steeper angle of attack. If you're a 15 to 20 handicapper, you vary your angle of attack completely by accident. That's why you're a 15 to 20 handicapper, because you're not grooved into the exact same angle of attack.
Be nice.
I'm trying to be nice, but the problem is that how do you fit something that constantly changes? And I was talking to a fitter one day, and I'll divulge off into this little parable. I'm talking to this club fitter, and he says, well, I like to fit bounce. And I said, well, let me ask you this. If a guy came in for a driver fitting, and his first swing, he hit a high slice. His second swing, he hit a smother hook. His third swing, he hit one right down the middle. His fourth swing, he topped the ball. Fifth swing, he skied it. Sixth swing, he hit a big high hook. Seventh swing, he hit a low squealing slice. How would you fit that guy when he can't make two swings in a row that are the same?
And
he
which
goes,
is like most of us.
I can't fit that guy. I can't fit him.
Yeah.
Well, I said, well, then how do you fit bounce when every wedge shot, the lie is going to be different than the one before that?
Right.
And he said, wow, I never thought of it that way. So, Randy, I'm going to tell you that the easiest solution, what you're doing, is to go buy Score 4161s with our patented V-sole, which has a high bounce and a low bounce in every wedge, in every sole, rather. And, every one of them is designed for that particular loft. Short of that, what a lot of people will do is carry, a low bounce club in maybe a 58 or 60 degree and a higher bounce club in a 54 or 56. And that way, if you have a high bounce situation, you use that club. If you have a low bounce situation, you use the other one. It's not ideal, but even the big manufacturers that make these conventional old style bounces, they will tell you that's what to do. I never like turning this show into a commercial for Score Golf or for the things I design. But, this is a big problem because conventional wisdom and conventional wedge design doesn't really lend itself to solve this problem. We believe we did with our patented V-sole. We got a cult-like following out there, as Fred knows, and a lot of your listeners out there, a lot of you all know you've tried our Eidolon wedges and now our Score 4161 precision scoring clubs, and we're really tackling that end of the set. We don't make drivers and irons, and we're focusing on helping people deal with this high end of the set, because people like Randy, you have questions and challenges, and so that's what we're trying to do. But Randy, and like I say, back to your question, my recommendation is I'd love you to try our stuff. We got one coming for free because we answered your question. You can fill out the rest of the set. But, for the rest of you all, if you're not ready to replace your scoring clubs, and we'd love a shot at your business if you do, but if you're not ready to replace that, try to have clubs in your bag that have a variety. Have a high bounce and a low bounce golf club in there. My recommendation is put your lower bounce on the higher loft club and your high bounce on the lower loft, the 54 to 56.
And why would you separate them that way? And I'm sorry if this is being redundant, because it's still, I don't know if, even with this explanation, if I can explain to somebody simply, here's what bounce is. Is there a simple answer of which is best, on the higher loft and the lower loft? I'm sorry to do that to you.
No, I mean, it's not, because it's a very complex topic.
It really is.
If the turf is soft, you need a higher bounce to help keep the club from digging, whether it's a bunker or whether it's a chip shot or a pitch shot. If the turf is soft, you're going to still be able to lay the club open a little bit. So you can add a little loft to that 54 or 56 by laying it open, and get the ball flight that you're after on that little short range shot. On full swing shots, it's not that critical, because you got a lot of club head speed to get the ball out of the turf anyway. The only time bounce becomes real critical in a full swing shot is when you're playing off of a very tight hard pan type lie, and a high bounce club is going to skip right in. If you hit it a little behind the ball, that high bounce club is going to skip into the ball. So if you have a long range shot and you're carrying, that it's, hey, I'd love to hit my 54 degree, but it's a high bounce club, and I've got a tight lie, then go to your P club or your gap wedge and just grip down on it a little bit, and something with less bounce. But it's a dilemma. I mean, I would tell you that there is no answer for this except what we did with the V-sole. I'm sorry, guys. I mean, that's just what it is, and because our sole never met a lie it didn't like, and there aren't any other wedges out there that do that, regardless of what these little nuanced grinds. And they say we took some off the heel and the toe and all that. That doesn't make a big difference. I mean, you have to have bounce to make a club function. And we've done something pretty marvelous with our V-sole, but there are ways to at least overcome some of the limitations of conventional wedge design. And the only one that I can recommend is have a high bounce club and have a low bounce club. I don't think you want to carry two clubs of the same loft, but because that gets into your full swing gapping. But again, the short end of the set, one of the things at the short end of the set, as I mentioned, I've got wedges in my collection from the 30s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. The wedge, which is why I say Score Golf doesn't make wedges, the wedge basically hasn't changed in 50, 60, 70 years. I've got a 1950s Spalding Dynamiter that if I took all the graphics off and re-chromed it, I would defy anybody to be able to tell that from one of the 2012 models out there.
Interesting. All right, buddy. Well, listen, we will talk to you again, and we'll cover another question in a couple episodes for the next Golf Smarter episode. Thank you very much for your time and for your knowledgeable answer.
Always a pleasure. Can't wait for the next show.